before today's video gets started, I do want to say that I do have the Etsy shop opened up, and I am able to sell the CRX Seth t-shirt and hoodie right now. Hopefully I'll be getting some stickers before long, or some decals, something like that. But if you want to support the channel and the builds on this channel, check that link out and pick you up some merchandise. Alright, welcome back to the channel. Today we're going to jump back on the 89 CRX Si. And hopefully we can get this thing wrapped up in this video. So what I'm going to be doing is pulling the sunroof assembly out of the car because there's something in there that's broken. I think I know what it is, and I've ordered a part to replace it, and I'm hoping that is what it is. But after we get that done and that part replaced, hopefully that goes smoothly. I've been kind of dreading doing that because I know it's going to be pretty involved, and I don't really know what all it's going to take to get that assembly out. So I've just been kind of putting it off and putting it off. But now we're to the point where I've got to get this thing done. And I'll also need to be sanding this sunroof panel down and polishing it up because it does have some clear coat imperfections in it that I'll need to take care of. So let's go ahead and get started. Alright, I'm going to start by removing these sun visors first, and then I'm going to move my way to the mirror, this little trim piece, some of the other trim pieces, and then the dome light in the back. Okay, my next move is the dome light. Now with that off, I'm going to pop this trim off here. Okay, now I'm going to pull this sunroof trim piece off. Alright, before I can pop the A-pillar trim back, I need to remove the passenger side grab handle. Now I can pop this back. Alright, we'll do the same thing on the driver's side. Alright, next move is to get this popped down a little bit so I can get this headliner out. Alright, we got the headliner out. I'll slide it out of the way. That way we can get the sunroof assembly disconnected. Okay, with the headliner taken out, we can actually see the sunroof motor in here. But what we're wanting to look at is actually inside of this tray here. So we're going to have to drop this whole assembly out. And all around here are some 10mm bolts that hold this thing on. So I'm going to have to get these disconnected and lowered out of here. So I'm going to lower it down and then take it out of the back hatch here. So I'm going to do that the best I can. Okay, before I forget, on each corner of the sunroof assembly there is a drain line, so I'm going to need to pull each one of those off before this thing will actually be able to be removed. Okay, before the sunroof assembly will actually come out, there is a wire that comes from the front of the car that's attached to it. You'll need to take a clip remover tool and pop these clips out here. You can actually squeeze it together and push it through. I'll have to do that with two hands. I don't think I can get that with just one. But there's a clip here, there's a clip here on the panel, and there's also a clip there, and there's a plug you'll have to undo. So I'm going to do that next. All right, I've got the sunroof still held in by one, looks like 2, 3 bolts. So I'm going to take out this front bolt here. This front will sag down a little bit, and then I'll be able to support the back here as I take these last 2 out and try to get this thing lowered down onto these seats, and then I'll slowly set it down. Alright, as you can see here, this is a little plastic piece. It's like a little linkage arm that's supposed to slide back and forth here. And what it does is it raises this piece up to lift up over the back of the roof of the car. And what I noticed before I painted the car is the sunroof, whenever it raised up, it didn't raise up high enough on this side, and it would scrape the actual roof of the car. So I knew I needed to fix it, otherwise it's going to ruin my new paint job. So I did a little research, and this little linkage arm is made out of plastic, unfortunately, and it gets brittle and it breaks over time. Now the passenger side is broken, the driver's side is fine, but I did buy some 3D printed replacement parts. I got them from GregParts. Let's go open those up and take a look at them. Alright, he sent a lot of paperwork, so it looks like some of the installation instructions on how to get these replaced. This is actually what I ordered here, the left and the right side. I went ahead and got both because I didn't know if the other one was broken or not. So let's take a look at these replacement pieces. They're also made out of plastic, but it's supposed to be a better, more durable plastic that was 3D printed. It looks like it's held together by some Allen screws here that separates. I'm going to read the instructions to see how we install these, but it looks like a pretty good part. So if you got any sunroof needs for CRXs, he also has the bump stops, and I went ahead and bought those as well because I didn't know what kind of shape those were in. So I've got the bump stops as well. So we're going to go ahead and get started on replacing this after I read these instructions. Alright, so actually his paperwork includes a sheet here that shows everything that he makes. I mean, at least as of the time he sent this. It's got CRX cup holders, the seatbelt light cover. He actually 3D prints an entire CRX armrest. That's pretty neat stuff. So I would definitely go check him out at GregParts.com. He's got some awesome stuff. Well, it looks pretty straightforward what we're going to be doing. He wants us to pull this little housing off of the tray, which is held on by some 8mm nuts and a couple Phillips screws. We can just move this broken piece out of the way. But the hardest part is actually going to be when we get this thing flipped over. Alright, now that we've got this flipped over, these are actually, this cover on the top here is actually riveted on to the bottom plate. So we're gonna have to cut these little rivets out. And I'm gonna use a Dremel tool or something to try to cut these out so I can get this separated, because the linkage arm actually mounts inside of here on the cable. Alright, with that removed, this actually has to be cut off because it was sandwiched on here and actually bonded together. But the new one actually has these Allen screws that hold it together, so that'll be an easy way to get it remounted on here. So I need to get this cut off, and then we'll see about getting this one mounted on. Alright, the next step here is actually to put this metal plate down next, but I'm going to go ahead and clean up some of this dust that I generated. Since I did grind down the zinc coating on here to keep this from rusting, because this will see water, I'm going to go ahead and throw a coating of a corrosion inhibitor on there, and that should help prevent that. Alright, now that the plate is in place, the next step is to actually separate this new linkage arm. Alright, the next step is to actually take the big side of the new linkage arm and slide it underneath the cable, and then we'll flip it over once we've got it together. But the black part of the cable actually has to sit further up in the housing. So to get this cable pulled out of here, I'm going to have to manually adjust the position of the sunroof. So I should be able to take an Allen key over here, I'll show you, and adjust this cable out. Alright, this is the bottom side, or the cabin side of the sunroof. When your headliner is in the car, you can actually take off a little cap here and then manually raise or lower your sunroof. So this is a 5mm Allen wrench. So I'm going to take this and put it in here, and then I'm going to rotate it the direction I want it to turn this. See how it rotates? I'll show you what it's doing to the cables up top. Okay, when I rotate the wrench, you can see how the cables will move. I'll make sure that this isn't catching here. See how they come out? So I'm going to rotate it and get this out where I need it. Then I'll put it in place on my new linkage arm. And once I get the positioning right, I had to double check to make sure I had it in the right spot, but it looks like it goes almost to the very top, and once you get it in place, it'll snap right into place. Alright, now that I've got this in place, I can actually put the top cover back on and then put the screws back in. Now his instructions do say to use some blue Loctite to help keep these from backing out over time. So we're going to go ahead and put some of that on there. Alright, the next step is to put the metal key back into the linkage. So it goes over here on this side. So you want to put it in there where none of it is extending out of the linkage arm, like that. Okay, the next step, he does say it could be a little bit tricky, but we're going to actually put this top metal housing back on to here. And remember, this is flipped around, so it's going to end up flipping around this way. So that the metal housing is going to need to go on like this. The next step is to add the rubber boot adapter that fell out before. So it's got notches in it here, so you want to make sure you put it on the right way. So you can see that the hole is on the right side of this, so we want to make sure that it's oriented that way. And once we do that, we'll position it where it needs to go. Alright, now I'm going to throw back on these 8mm nuts to hold it in place, as well as the Phillips screws. This one's a little tricky because it's got a nut on the bottom side. Alright, the last step is to actually slide this boot over the boot cover and put the clip back in. Okay, with everything bolted up and tightened down and the boot back in place, this thing should be good to go. So I'm going to take the manual Allen wrench over here and actually rotate this a little bit and see if it actually does what it's supposed to do without binding up. Be careful here, because if it does start binding, you don't want to break your new linkage arm. So you did see that the linkage arm actually did move up and lifted this mechanism up, which will allow this sunroof to actually lift up high enough to go over the roof of the car. So I'm going to actuate this a few times just to make sure everything's working properly, and then we're going to move to the other side. with it all done, I'm going to go ahead and give it a good coating of this silicone spray just to help lubricate some of these parts before I get it back in the car. Before I put this headliner back in, I'm going to go ahead and give it a quick wash. Alright, I got the sunroof assembly put back in the car and the headliner put back in, as well as the mirrors and things like that that hold it up. So now that all that's done, I haven't been able to test it out yet because I'm going to wait until I get the sunroof actually polished up and put on there, and then we'll slowly creep it back to make sure that it's going to do what it's supposed to do. Whenever I cranked it manually, it did appear that everything's going to work fine. So I'm going to move on to this. I'm going to sand it down with 1500 grit, and then I'm going to move up to 3000 grit, and then I'm going to step it up to a polishing pad, and then or a buffing pad, and then a polishing pad, and hopefully we'll be done with this pretty quickly. It's pretty small. Alright, I'm trying to figure out the order that this thing has to go back on. I think I'm going to start with this seal. Alright, I'm going to move on to these seal holders. I think that's what goes on next. Alright, off camera I did put on the front stopper. It's really difficult to record and it's really difficult to do, but I did show it in a previous video removing it, so it's just the opposite of removing it. So the last step here is going to be to put these front bolts back in the sliders. Alright, and the passenger side, same thing. Alright, with the sunroof in, this car is 99% complete. So that's a good thing. I was dreading that sunroof, but it really wasn't as hard as I was thinking it was going to be. I'm glad it's done, and it does work, but there is, whenever you open it up, there is a little bit of a shimmy whenever you go all the way open. I don't know if something inside there needs to be greased a little bit more, but for a 30-something-year-old car, I'm going to call that a win. It does work, and it does not hit the roof like it was previously. So those little pieces from GregParts really did the trick. I definitely look him up if you need any sunroof parts or any 3D printed parts for EFs or CRXs or something like that. So I'm going to wrap this video up here, and the next video, I'm not really sure what I'm going to be doing to this. Probably cleaning it up, getting it ready for the new owner, and maybe just a little showcase video, something like that. I may end up moving on to the black CRX, kind of introducing some things I've got for it. I have been picking up some different parts for it, so I'll show that pretty soon. So stick around, and we'll be moving on to the next car after this one gets sold.